Hello and welcome to Freed Indeed Live. I'm your host, Kevin J. N. Hughes, and um, today I want to talk about worship. And I want to talk about why I think we often get our idea of worship wrong. But before I get into that, um, please check out our sponsor, which is the Bible Memory app and BibleMemory.com. If you use Bible Memory Pro, using promo code FREED, no, promo code FREED Indeed, you get 30% off and you'll be supporting our work here at Freed Indeed Ministries. If you just want to support our work, no, you don't want to go through a sponsor, I do have a link in the description below where you can support us. So thank you very much. Now, to get into the topic of worship, I highly recommend this book, Orthodox Worship: Living Continuity with the Synagogue, the Temple, and the Early Church. It's by Benjamin D. Williams and Harold Anstall. Now, the reason I highly recommend this book is because this book basically gives biblical and historical support for everything that I'm going to talk about today. So I highly recommend that book. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know um, in the comments below. But this book would answer realistically any questions that I think I'm gonna get for the most part. Although I don't think it addresses the space one that I covered in uh, a video that I made. I think a week ago or so, that was maybe even 2 weeks ago, that had been sent in. It doesn't address that, but it addresses most questions that we get. So, highly recommend that book. But basically, what I want to talk about is oftentimes, I guess, basically, what I want to talk about is does how we worship matter? Because a lot of times, what I hear from people is, for example, I hear Anglicans say things like, we have Christian liberty, so we can wear vestments or not wear vestments, and it doesn't matter. I hear that same kind of sentiment most of the time from like Presbyterians. Either they are dead set against vestments, or they're like, well, we can just not wear them because Christian liberty. And you can wear them, but we won't because Christian liberty. On the other hand, um, I often hear, like I said, it's just the whole spectrum of things. But one thing that is pretty much always said is like, well, God accepts all worship as long as it's from the heart. He doesn't really care how we worship him. So my question is that true? Does God not care how we worship him? Or does God, I think that what gets ignored in this kind of question is that God has revealed how to worship him. And it's not fog machines, and it's not angel feathers raining from the ceiling, and it's also not a guy in a suit standing behind a podium talking. These are not what God has revealed. And why does this matter? Well, God has revealed that he takes how we worship him very seriously. Leviticus 10 tells us that there were two brothers named Nadab and Abihu. They were sons of Aaron, and Nadab and Abihu decide that they're going to offer God strange fire. So they're going to worship God in a way that he hasn't told them to worship him. And the text says, now Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's sons, each took his censer and put fire in it. They put incense in it and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. And so fire went out from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. And then Moses said to Aaron, this is what the Lord spoke, saying, By those who come near me I shall be sanctified, and before all the congregation I shall be glorified. So Aaron was greatly distressed. Moses then called Mishael and Elzapha, the sons of Uzziel, Aaron's uncle, and said to them, Come near and carry your brethren from the presence of the sanctuary outside the camp. So they came near, and they carried them by their tunics outside the camp, as Moses said. Then Moses said to Aaron and Eleazar, and Ithamar his sons, do not uncover your heads, nor take off your garments, lest you die, and wrath come down upon all the congregation. But lest your brethren and the whole house of Israel bewail the burning the Lord kindled, you shall not go out from the door of the tabernacle of testimony, lest you die, for the anointing oil of the Lord is upon you. So they did according to Moses' word. And then it goes on to talk about the conduct of priests. But my point is, God obviously takes this concept of how we worship him very seriously. Because when Nadab and Abihu chose to worship him in a way that he didn't want, they died from that. So it matters. And so this is why it's so important to follow the Orthodox liturgy. This is why it's so important to worship God in the way that He has actually taught us to worship Him, not in some strange way. We don't worship God by having, you know, oh, it's a sermon and we just sing a couple of hymns and then have a sermon. No, that's not what God has revealed. That's not what God desires. That's not what God delights in. God delights in the kind of worship that the scriptures teach us. God delights in worship that, I mean, the temple service was very elaborate. That's the kind of thing God delights in. God delights in exactly the kind of service that the Orthodox Church uses. It has used since the time of the apostles. And when we dishonor God when we, well-meaning as we may be, try to come up with excuses and say that God doesn't really care and it doesn't really matter and God just accepts whatever worship we offer as long as it's from the heart. That dishonors God. God has revealed to us how he wants to be worshipped, and we ought to worship him in that way. It's that simple. Um, so thank you very much for watching this. Like I said, I highly recommend this book, and I think this is just an introduction. I'm not going to go into all of the ins and outs, but if you guys want to see worship and liturgy discussed more on this show, please feel free to let me know. I'm happy to discuss those things. But I'm not really an expert in the liturgy, and so I do refer you guys to people who are experts rather than trying to cover topics I don't have tons of knowledge on, but I'm happy to do the research. I'm happy to examine the scriptures with you guys if that's what you want. Okay. Thank you very much, and God bless.